Hello everyone, how are you doing? If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you've been watching some of my Colombia videos, buenas empanadas, damas y caballeros, ¿cómo estás? Today, as I go on a little photography excursion to a really nice waterfall here on Vancouver Island in Canada, I'm going to describe how I managed to travel for 4.5 months in a year while making $20,000 US in that year. And 20,000 US dollars is approximately $27,500 Canadian at today's exchange rate, and it's mid-April in 2024. I already made another video describing all this. However, it turned out to be a little bit long, so this is going to be hopefully the shorter, abbreviated version. In part one, I'm going to describe my lifestyle here in Canada, which allows me to save up enough money to go traveling for 4.5 months. In part two, I'll describe my lifestyle in the country that I visit, which typically for the past several years has been Colombia. However, it could be just as well any other country that you can travel to that's fairly cheap, like Vietnam, Thailand, Laos, the Philippines, and a few others. And third, I'll describe what it is that motivates me to live the way that I live. So let's get right into it. My lifestyle here in Canada. I live near Victoria and I do rent. And so first off, while most other people are paying anywhere from $1,000 to $1,400 to rent a bachelor suite or a one-bedroom apartment, I'm paying $300 per month, or $350 during the colder months when I have to use a heater. So $350 Canadian. That includes everything, Wi-Fi, electricity, water, and on top of that, one of my monthly bills is my cell bill, which is about $45 per month Canadian. My car insurance, that would be 55 Canadian per month. I'm gonna say on average I spend 200 Canadian dollars on fuel, and that's mainly because I like to do my little nature excursions like I'm doing today. So at the price of gas right now, that adds up fairly quickly. Now as far as food is concerned, I live a very healthy lifestyle, and so I buy mostly organic foods, and I don't eat out in restaurants. Maybe once per month I'll swing by and buy Chinese food takeout, and that's a kind of a smorgasbord. That's $20, so I don't have a big food expense. But yeah, $500 on average per month, and that's eating really healthy, and that's me doing all my own cooking. One of the creek scenes on my way to the waterfall. But here's what I don't do, which saves me a lot of money. For starters, I don't drink alcohol, although technically I have nothing against taking a sample of wine. For instance, when I'm in Colombia and I was at a monastery, for instance, and the mother, the nun, she told us that they make wine at the monastery, so I thought, well, it'd be interesting to try that, and I did. So I don't have anything against that. I do no drugs of any type, whether pharmaceutical or recreational. No marijuana, not even the soft stuff. I don't smoke. I've never smoked. And also, I don't drink coffee. And if you even add up how much probably most of you watching this spend on coffee for a year, that could in some cases add up to a plane ticket, sometimes even round trip to a nice destination. So I save a lot of money just on those things alone. We're just about the waterfall, and so in a moment I'm going to show you this beautiful waterfall, one of my favorites on the island, and I'll let you enjoy it for a moment too, because one of my favorite things, as mentioned, is to get out into nature and to just enjoy the peace and quiet. And as you'll see, I have this place all to myself. Here it is. And the conditions are almost perfect for the flow of water. Check that out. Here's another angle for you. I hope you enjoyed that little nature interlude. I know I did. So continuing on, I've never been married, and I don't have kids, and I don't have a girlfriend, so obviously that saves me quite a lot of money. And of course, living the way I do doesn't exactly put me high on a lot of women's list either. Not owning a house and all that kind of stuff, but that's another story. Later on I'll show you some video of where I live, and it's basic, to put it mildly. It's basically like a very rustic camping cabin situation. It's well, I dubbed it the Hobbit house, and it's a little 12.5 by 12.5 foot square space above someone's workshop. So I know a lot of people aren't going to be willing to live that way, but again, it's all a matter of priorities, and I'll talk about it, that kind of stuff, at the end. I can tell you that I have no debt, and I don't owe any money to anyone, and all I care about as far as a vehicle is concerned is a reliable vehicle that gets me from point A to point B. And so I have a 1998 Honda CR-V that I paid 1,800 Canadian for over 3 years ago, and it's still going strong. And I don't care about impressing other people by having a cool car or a luxury car or what have you. So I'm quite content to keep life really simple. I don't spend money on expensive watches or jewelry or clothes, any of that kind of stuff. I basically only buy the things that I truly need, and a splurge for me, for instance, is buying a new action camera and accessories for the camera and things like that. Next, onto my job and work situation. Yes, I do work, and I want to make it very clear that above and beyond the 20,000 US that I mentioned at the top, I didn't get some big inheritance. I didn't make a whole bunch of money in Bitcoin. I've never actually even traded Bitcoin or any of the cryptocurrencies, not on the stock market or anything like that. I don't have any secret condos where I get rental money. I don't have any other sources of income. So that's that. The only one thing that I haven't mentioned so far is that I get a little bit money from the books that I wrote, but that still makes it so that it comes in under the 20,000 K per year. And only starting this past year, because I'm actually 61 now, I started collecting my Canadian pension at 60. And And so the first year that gave me an extra $248 per month, but that was that's not a whole lot extra. And now I get $260 per month this year. So again, I'll put all the numbers on the screen so we can do the math, and you'll see that it still all comes under 20,000 K. But obviously the 260 per month does help. But I was doing the same thing, traveling for, in the past, generally more like 3 months or 4 months on when I wasn't getting that extra money. So it still wouldn't make a difference. It's just a bit of bonus money at this point. My work situation is one of the keys to this little puzzle of getting to go away. I work at a university in Victoria, and I work in what's called the production department, and I'm actually on call. And so when it comes right down to it, I can say when I'm available and when I'm not. And I'm high enough up in the seniority list right now. It's actually a perfect situation wherein when I come back, I work full-time hours. I work 5 days a week, 7.5 hours per day. And then when October, November comes around, I just let them know in writing that I'll be away for 4.5 months. And the way that the rules are stated, that's okay. And it's not a big deal because there's other people that can take my place and they get more work when I'm away. And it's a lot slower during the winter months anyways, and so they don't miss me too much. Getting into some more specifics as far as what I earn. When I do work a full month, I make 3,200 Canadian dollars. And that's take home, but that's what I'm counting. And so again, I'll put the numbers on the screen so you can see exactly what I make, and we'll keep subtracting and we'll see where we're at as far as what I have left. But I already know in general that I have approximately, after all expenses, including my trip, flight, everything, gas, all the things that I do when I'm here, I still am saving money to the tune of around $12,000. Of course, once in a while I need repairs. I just paid $200 for a new battery. But other than that, I haven't spent much on my vehicle. And I want to mention that it isn't that I couldn't spend more money. I could go out to movies and things like that. I could go to dinner and do all those, a bunch of the things that I mentioned if I really wanted to. But again, what does it for me is getting out into nature and doing photography, doing some vlogs, and just exploring. And I think that getting out into nature is great for one's health, and I love it. So other than gas to get to the places that I want to go, it's not too expensive. Since I'm passing right by it, I thought I'd show you another nice little waterfall with lots of beautiful, amazing green colors all over the place. It's very mossy. As it continues to rain a little bit. Hello. It's actually a new day. I had to stop doing the vlogging yesterday because it started raining a little bit too hard. So definitely a lot nicer today, and it's supposed to be sunny all week, so looking forward to that. Anyhow, continuing on, next up is part 2, my lifestyle and costs when I travel, in this case Colombia. Let's start off with one of the big costs, which is the airfare. And in 2023 November, the airfare was $1,000 Canadian, which is about 740 US dollars. And that's actually on the high end in comparison to what I have paid on most of my other trips. I think the lowest I ever paid was $650, which is really, really good deal. And it's about 10 and a half hours to get to Colombia, Bogota to be specific, from Vancouver. And I'm talking about just airtime. Next up would be hotels or hostels. And I'd say on average, when I do my road trips down there, I'm paying $15 to $20 Canadian. Once in a while on the high end is 25, and that's for a private room, usually with a private bathroom. Sometimes not, but usually yes, with a private bathroom. And when I select rooms, I always read reviews, and for $15 to $20, sometimes as low as $12. I've had rooms for as low as $12. And they're decent rooms. We're not talking about some dive in a crummy area of the city or town that I'm in. So $15 to $20 gets me a decent room, pretty much always with a TV, and they all have Wi-Fi down there. But what I've done in the last 3 years, I believe, is when I stayed in Sand Hill about 5 years ago in a hostel, I became friends with the owner of the hostel, who's been in several of my videos, Floor. And she offered me a monthly deal. And it was a great deal at the time it was only costing 110 Canadian, but our dollar is slipped down quite a bit in comparison to the Colombian peso. So now it's more like 135. But it's such a good deal that I usually give her more like 150 nowadays. So $150 for a whole month for a private room, full use of the kitchen, laundry, and it's right by the main park, the Parque Principal. And that is the way to go. But of course, a lot of people are only in a country sometimes for 10 to 14 days, so naturally you're going to want to see as much as possible. But I'm describing how I managed to, as I've said, live on 20,000 US, and that's how I do it. That's how I travel for 4.5 months. For about 2.5 of those months, I stay in Sand Hill and I just kind of chill out and live a normal life. And I'll do my own cooking for breakfast and dinner. And I'll go out for lunch. And on average, lunch down there is it's up to about 13,000 pesos, which is about $4.80 Canadian. But I generally eat on $10 Canadian or $7.40 US per day. And when I'm in Sand Hill, that's when I do my vlog editing, and I've got photos to work on, and so I have lots of things to do. And I'll just enjoy going for walks, real basic things. And maybe a couple times a week I'll do a little road trip to a little town that's nearby, and the bus is cheap. It's only about anywhere from $1.50 to $3.50. A couple examples are the towns of Barichara and Kuriti, if you want to watch those videos. Just beautiful little towns, nice and peaceful, clean, safe. And so I'd say all totaled, my cost for my 4.5 month trip, including airfare, it's probably about 5,000 Canadian dollars, maybe 5,500. But I'm spending only around $550 when I'm in Sand Hill. When I do a longer road trip of maybe 10 to 14 days, then I'll be staying in a lot of different hotels, and I'll be doing some more costly adventures because I like doing extreme sports like paragliding, things like that. Got a big noisy dog barking if I go that way, so I'm going to go a different way. As I was saying, I like to do extreme sports, and I also really enjoy doing things like tubing in slot canyons and rivers and other such things. And the cost of those, sometimes they're getting up to be about 300,000 pesos, which is 100 Canadian dollars for an all-day excursion, but that usually includes lunch at the very least, if not breakfast as well. To give you another example, when I went to the town of Gambita, I went to a cave and some waterfalls, and I paid 120,000 pesos for a private guide, and that included lunch as well. And so the guide, for instance, he had his own motorcycle, so I went on the back of the motorcycle. That included transport to the spot where the caves were, and he accompanied me and guided me to the caves and through the waterfalls, and then back to town where we had lunch. And 120,000 pesos is about 45 Canadian dollars, so that's pretty good for a private guide. So those are just some examples of my higher end costs. If I don't do a long distance travel, the buses are again pretty cheap from town to town. Taxis are cheap, and I won't get into all the costs, but again, suffice it to say that an expensive month in Colombia for me, which I'm sure it's similar in Southeast Asia and other places, high end is going to be $1,500, but I think it's more like $1,200 for a month where I'm doing a bunch of adventures and staying in different hotels. And because I go to mostly small towns, sometimes the hotels those ones are $10 to $15, so obviously that doesn't add up to too much. So apart from all that, I basically am living the same way that I do in Canada. I'm not going out to bars and drinking, and I have to throw this in there because some men are going to Colombia for other reasons, other types of sports you might call them, which would involve paying women, and I'm not doing those kinds of things. So, but to each their own, no judgment. Speaking of women, you might be wondering, do I ever go on dates with the women down there? And the answer is, I used to when I was younger, but the reality is that now that I'm 61, pretty hard to come by. And let's just say I haven't had any dates for the past 3-4 trips. It's not that I'm not open to it, not that I wouldn't like to, but we'll leave it at that to keep the video short. Maybe I'll discuss these kinds of things in a separate video. Now, one other little cost is getting a SIM card, of course, but that's pretty minimal. You can buy a SIM card in any number of places all over the place when you get into Bogota. Little stands on the street, stores all over the place. And you can get a SIM card with some minutes and some data for approximately as little as $5 Canadian. And then you just pay as you go as you run out of the minutes, or you can get a package like I did. And I paid 16,000 pesos for a monthly package, which included data, minutes, and that's about $5.80 Canadian. And I even found that I wasn't really using it much. So when I was in San Gil at my home base, I didn't even bother getting the package for the month. So all totaled, I might have spent 32,000 pesos, maybe 40,000, which is about $17-18 Canadian on cell phone bill. Yeah, this is a beach. It's about 20 minutes from where I live. One of many beaches that I can go to. I suppose that I should probably mention that part of my deal for my monthly long rate is that I can take off for a few days or 2 weeks, however long I want. And the way that it works is that it's 30 accumulated days, not 30 consecutive days. So that's really good. And I can tell you also that when I was in the town of La Aguada and I was staying at a hotel, the lady offered me a rate of $75 per month. So if you're going to slow travel and do things the way that I'm doing, definitely try to find a place that you like and a town that you like. Maybe use that as your home base and try to get an extra good deal like I did. So I think that'll wrap up part 2, and so on to part 3. What is it that inspires me to live as I do? And thinking about it, I guess there's 3 main factors. The one would be that I grew up in a tiny community, a couple tiny communities actually. One was Cobble Hill, one was Shawnigan Lake on Vancouver Island. And I lived in a extremely tiny home. And these communities, both of them, literally only had 2 small grocery stores and a gas station. And that was it back then in the 60s and 70s. But even though I did grow up in a tiny house, the smallest house of anybody that I knew, I never ever felt hard done by. Because where I lived there's lots of nature nearby, and I loved to ride my bike, etc., and explore the woods. And B, I was very fortunate that, even though we lived in a tiny house, I never missed a meal or ever went hungry. And I had, good parents. Now, I guess the second reason is that I have traveled to countries like India, Colombia, as you know, many times. And when I was in India in particular, I remember one time I was walking along a dirt road looking for a tiny little bakery out in the middle of nowhere, and I found it. And it really wasn't a bakery, but it was just a little shack that sold some cookies. And so I bought a bag of those cookies, and then when I kept walking, I came upon a little village that had mud huts. And about 6 kids came running up to me with big smiles on their faces, and they obviously lived in those mud huts. But yet, it just struck me that how amazing it is that so many kids that I've seen around the world, including the Philippines, Guatemala, Mexico, other places like that, yet they seem to be happier than us westernized people who have a nice big house, a fancy car, TV in every room, and all that kind of stuff. And so that made it pretty obvious that material things do not equate to happiness. And the third related thing is that, I went on my big spiritual journey, which was partly why I was in India several years ago. And it became even more obvious that material things do not equate to happiness, because a lot of the richest people on the planet are pretty miserable. And so I'll leave it at that. Now, my priority in life, as I mentioned before, I think, is to be as healthy as possible, to be as reasonably happy as possible, and to just have a semblance of inner peace and harmony and all that good stuff. And I can do that whether I'm in nature or not becomes irrelevant. This is beautiful, I love this, but the goal is to be able to be happy in the moment wherever I happen to be. Of course, that's not always as easy done as said, but that is my goal. And as long as I have the basic necessities of life, which is proper food for nutrition, a roof over my head that's safe and clean preferably, and some clothes, and whatever the other necessities truly are, then I can certainly be happy. So I think I'll try to wrap things up here, because I can tend to rattle on and on. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that if your goal is to travel, that you can figure out a way how you can do it, as I have. And I guess I'll add that the other thing that really motivates me, I just enjoy experiencing other cultures, other foods, the music that goes along with that in other countries. And it just gives me what I consider to be a more well-rounded perspective on life. And I hope I can continue to do that for years to come. And one of my goals with my channel is to inspire people to live a healthy lifestyle. And at 61, I can still do all the adventures that I was able to do back in my 20s and 30s. And my goal is to continue doing that into hopefully my 70s and even my 80s. And I often say to people, you really have to earn your health these days, because there's so many factors that are going against all of us when it comes to retaining or gaining health. And that's why I wrote my books that are titled Getting Real in the Unreal World, The Story of a Rude Awakening and Inspiration, volumes 1, 2, and 3, with the third one being 655 pages long. And it contains all the keys to health. And I think it's one of the most comprehensive books on health that there is out there and available. Available on Amazon. Just look for the title and my name, Thomas Dawson, you'll find it. So, again, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. Till next time, hasta los tacos.